In 2019, Gavin Newsom enacted California Senate Bill 328, which restricts high schools from starting before 8:30 a.m. Starting July 1st, 2022, all high schools in California must apply the new schedule. The goal? To reduce tardiness and absences. However, researchers in the American Academy of Sleep Medicine commented that this schedule change would give students the opportunity to get more sleep, which could improve grades, depression, and dropout rates, which are all worsened by sleep deprivation. Today, school starts at 8 a.m. Students wander through the halls, half asleep and chugging energy drinks. By 9, the rest of the school arrives. These students have had more time to prepare for the day and for their classes. Over the course of 2 weeks, we interviewed over 20 students and teachers on their opinions of the schedule change and mental health.
I think the workload of classes affects my mental health drastically, I want to say.
It definitely doesn't help. Trying to get homework in and do extracurriculars can be very draining on my mental health.
The schedule that I have is like most of my AP classes in one day, and with that comes like a lot more added stress.
It made my mental health like really bad. Super depressed, super anxious, all that great stuff.
I feel like work at school is like probably the number one thing that is bad for my mental health.
I don't necessarily fall under probably those people or in line with those people that think that the best way to challenge students is to give them more work, but rather to try to elicit more critical thinking from students. And so the way that I generally try to do that is to have more inquiry-based labs and projects as much as possible, rather than direct instruction. My hope is that students then have this idea that, hey, I can come to class and be engaged for 90 minutes in chemistry class, and then when I leave, I might think about the things that I learned in chemistry, but I don't have 30 chemistry problems that I have to do at home. I want them thinking about the concepts rather than what some people call like plugging and chugging on problems.
I think it's really like the execution and achievement of the standard that I'm assigning is more important to me than like enforcing particularly like strict or really rigid late work policies and things like that. So to me, that's a support for mental health. Demonstrates less rigor, but I don't.
Mental health. So I think that
I allow them to have free rights, so they're allowed to write to me about what's going on outside of school, and I comment and give them advice about how to proceed with that in order to improve my students' mental health.
I think that we, as like a society and as like kids, we hold ourselves so accountable for our grades, and we think that like everything is only about our grades. So I definitely see like the workload heavily impacting not just me but like everyone.
I'm definitely for it. When we look at the data from what I've read, and I certainly haven't read all of the data, but from the studies I've read, it's shown this, that when we start school later in studies that have been done, what we find is that we don't see like a huge spike in like students' grades, like GPA and that sort of thing. But that's not the only metric either, right? That's like not the only thing that's important is what are students' grades. What we do see a significant increase in, again from the studies that I've read, our students are getting more sleep, number one, and that's a really important metric. So now, however much that affects how much better their grades is, there doesn't seem to be, from what I've read, a huge link between those two things. But well-rested students are good. That's more important than the grades that they're getting. If we're really trying to support students' overall health, the start of the school day is kind of one thing that we can do, but there's lots of other things that we can do. We can provide, and I think our school has done an increasingly better job of this, providing things like mental health services on campuses, providing students with other resources, even if they're not in school, providing access to community resources that students can access if they need to. And so the answer is, again, this shift in the time of school, it's not a silver bullet, but I think recognizing the issues that we're trying to address and making really significant change towards solving these problems is really, really good. And I think anytime we can take a step in the right direction, that's a good thing, right? Even if we can't go as far as we would like. So that's what I would say.
I think that the idea of the schedule change is good. I think that the idea of supporting students' sleep schedules is good. I think the logistics are complicated because although the governor said that we're changing student schedules, they're not changing their family schedules. And so a lot of students rely on their families to bring them here. So I think that's an issue. I think another issue is that if we end up moving our schedule back by half an hour, a lot of students are going to lose a lot of class for sports because they leave early.
With sports, because I know some sports start like you have to wait a long time at school because they don't start right after school. So that would be less stressful. For me, it would cause less stress because I would like get to sleep in more.
For sure, more sleep. I don't know about hobbies though. I think it's going to give us a little bit amount of less time, but I mean, the positive side about it is that we get more sleep about it.
Kind of takes time from students that like homework time, because you can't really do homework in the morning. Honestly, I think it'll probably end up causing more stress if school ends later, because that really just cuts into the time that we have for homework. I think either way, they can't really fix the main problem, which is school ending later.
I'm not going to wake up earlier every morning just so that I can like get homework done.
I do think that it's a really healthy decision that the school has decided to move it down. However, I think it's going to impact a lot of athletes.
I think if the school ends later, I think that will cause a lot more issues because, like, I don't want to be leaving school at 3:40. I have things to do. I have athletics to do. I have homework. Like, I think if you're going to move the schedule back, that's really late.
I do work after school, and so if I'm not out till 4 o'clock, that means I have to push my starting work until about 4:30. And average student who's in school works about 5-hour shifts. You're done at 9:30, 10. You have to go home, do homework, try to get some sleep. But yeah, we start later. But I live far away. My brother has school at 8 a.m. So even if they push school later, I'd be here over an hour and a half early before my classes start.
I feel like it depends. Like if you don't have like a last period or a first period, it might help because then you get to sleep in more. But I feel like if you do still have that first period and last period, it will make you more stressed because I don't think the extra 30 minutes in the morning would make as much difference, but having an extra 30 minutes at like after school might make you more stressed because it's closer to like sports practice and other things after school.
I think it'll allow me to get more sleep. I don't know if it'll allow me to have more time to do things besides sleeping, but I think it's worth it.
My concern is pushing school later into the day. So if we get closer to like 4 o'clock and students still have practice or rehearsals or jobs that they have to, they have other commitments, that is going to be a struggle, getting home later, and that interrupts family time, and then you've got later nights.
I think like the aims of the schedule change, I think are good. I think it's going to depend on how it's implemented. When the state made the decision to change to the 8:30 start, it really wasn't about student mental health. It was about student physical health. So it might be good for physiological health, and it might create some challenges for mental health that were unintended consequences.
I think as a whole in our society, we don't put a lot of emphasis on work-life balance, and starting to make changes for a younger generation is good because then as you all get older, hopefully you will make the changes that will then continue on for the rest of society.
In terms of if the schedule is enough to support students, like I said before, I think it's a Band-Aid on a much bigger issue of equity. I don't think the start time was the issue that we should have been dealing with. It's more about why some students need to get here earlier than others and why students are tired and stressed out to begin with. I don't think it's about the start of school. I think it's about the stress of workloads as well as the inequalities we see and socioeconomic factors that contribute to it.
What are some solutions? Listen to student voices and what they are asking for. Give less of a workload because we are already attend school for 7 hours. Support students pursuing interests outside of school and give the opportunity to do that by giving less work. Continue to make policy change to support students. And if there is a lot of work, be more lenient with students and due dates, acknowledging mental health. A half-hour schedule change is not going to give the students that much more sleep, and the large workload causes students to be up late. The issues that students are experiencing will not be solved by a half-an-hour schedule change. It's a step in the right direction, but more needs to be done.